Joined now by Dallas Mavericks TV announcer Mark Followill. And Mark, the draft was Thursday night. Dallas was in a huge trade. They drafted one player. Cleveland drafted three players, and they swapped a lot of picks. One of those picks was Jae Crowder, who played a lot of ball here at Howard. I'm not sure how much you've been able to look at him at Marquette, but how well do you think he'll fit in with the Mavs?
Well, it's great to be with you, Greg. Whenever a player is a conference player of the year and a conference that's the caliber of the Big East and has the basketball reputation that the Big East has, then clearly that's going to be something that should be eye-opening to people. And, you're right. Obviously, with the time and energy that's devoted to broadcasting an NBA team over the course of a year, that doesn't leave, unfortunately, a whole lot of time for watching college basketball. But from the things that I've read and the people that I've talked about, they just rave about Jae Crowder, and people love how he plays. And Rick Carlisle had some great things to say about him in the post-bat press conference. And the thing I will say is this about Jae Crowder. When I read about the kid and read that he is a high-character guy, he's a high-motor guy, he's going to play hard all the time. And when you look at his background, having to go from one junior college that lost its accreditation down at South Georgia Tech to transferring out there to Big Spring, and then to get himself eligible to go to the D1 level academically, he had to take a heavy load of classes and a bunch of summer school. To see the work that he put in to put himself at the place he is, around here in Dallas during the 2011 championship run, there were some buzzwords that we had around here that Rick Carlisle used a lot, and those words were persistence, perseverance, and resourcefulness. And I think when I look at Jae Crowder's background, he has exhibited on some level all three of those things to reach where he is today. And so as far as a guy who fits into the culture of the Dallas Mavericks organization, I think he's a fantastic fit, and I'm sure that's one of the obvious things that drew Dallas to him and why they ended up selecting him in the draft.
It seems like there's a changing of the guard in the Western Conference. The Thunder are young and just picked up a steal with Perry Jones in the draft, and they're getting younger while Dallas and San Antonio are getting older. So does this help Crowder out trying to be able to make the team, because in the few years the roster is going to have such a huge turnover?
I don't think there's any question about that. I think you're right on there. The Mavericks are a team in transition right now, with having won a title in 2011, but having won that championship with an old team with a lot of veterans. And so some of those faces have already moved along. Some of those faces will probably be moving along at different destinations as the free agency of this offseason plays out. So clearly, like I said, this is a time of transition for Dallas, and there are going to be opportunities for new faces to establish themselves here, for young players to come in and get some opportunity. And Rick Carlisle said in the past that the fastest way for a young player to get on the floor with him is to come in and compete hard and play well on the defensive end of the floor. And those are clearly attributes it would appear that Jae Crowder brings to the table. So that really works in his favor.
Looking at all the draft sources and outlets before the draft, everybody was raving on his heart, but not his size, being a small forward. In fact, he ranked, I think, number 16 on the small forward board before the draft. What does he have to do to be able to make the team?
I think prove that he can come out and compete and play at a high level on the defensive end of the floor. Because, again, there's a lot of empty roster spots with the Mavericks right now, and who knows how things are going to play out in free agency, what they're going to end up doing and signing free agents or making trades as teams, will be put together over the month of July and on into August and things like that. But I think he's got a fine shot to make the team, because he'll do things that the Mavericks value very highly, and he'll do it in a way that the Mavericks appreciate. Because, look, Dallas, make no bones about it, they've had a history of always wanting to be mindful of putting a team on the floor that not only plays well and wins a lot of games and competes, but also is a team with individuals. And it doesn't always work out this way, and like every team, they've had their bumps in the road in this regard, but they certainly want to put individuals on the floor that the community and the sports fans and the Maverick fans can be proud of, and personally. And by all accounts, Jae Crowder's that kind of guy, man. So look, I didn't, going into it, didn't know a whole lot about him, but I'm astounded at some of the things that people are saying about him, and just how effusive they are in the praise of him, how glowingly they speak of him, how positively they speak of him. You yourself, when we were talking away from the interview, Greg, were just another guy in that group of people. So from that standpoint, I'm really excited to hear what I hear and think that he certainly has a lot of things working in his favor in terms of making the Dallas Mavericks.
Being a second-round draft pick, the NBA draft is only 2 rounds. Does that mean if you get drafted, you've got a pretty good chance of making the team, or do second-round draft picks traditionally have a harder time making the team, or do they end up in the NBDL?
Second-round draft picks are kind of a crapshoot. The biggest difference is in the NBA, a first-round draft pick gets a 4-year contract, of which 2 years are fully guaranteed, and then there are team options for the 3rd and the 4th year, but those options have to be picked up almost a full year in advance. So, there is some differences in terms of, whereas a second-round pick usually is going to be a guy who they'll take a look at them in the summer league, which is what the first step going to be for Jae Crowder. Here in a few days, the Mavericks will start their summer league training camp and then take the summer league squad out to Las Vegas to play in about an 8 to 10 day summer league, where he'll get a chance to play in 4 or 5 games, however many games it is they have on their schedule. And if they like how he looks in the summer league, and presumably they will, then he'll be offered some sort of contract. And what a lot of second-round guys typically get is a 2-year contract at league minimum. The first year is all or partially guaranteed, and then the second year usually is at a team option. And then after 2 years, then if if a player shines and plays well, then they've got a chance to jump into restricted free agency, and who knows where it goes from there. But that's typically how the process plays out with a second-round pick in the NBA. The first step, like I said, would be the summer league, and then I outline the parameters of the type of contract that I would think that a player of that caliber typically would be offered, and we'll see where it goes from there.
We're talking with Mark Followill, broadcaster on TV for the Dallas Mavs. Mark,
hey, Greg, if I may jump in real quick, just one thing to backtrack on that too. You brought up the concept of the D-League. Another thing that happens is that he can be the Mavericks property, and he can be one of the 15 guys that's on their roster. There are 13 to 15 guys. And then the Mavericks, over the course of the season, if he's not getting an opportunity to develop with the Mavericks themselves, then they can send him to their D-League affiliate, the NBDL team, down in Frisco, the Texas Legends, and he can play down there. You can do that. It used to be you only could do that for players in their first 2 years in the league. Now with the new CBA, those rules and that time frame has been expanded. So that's another thing that could happen for Jae Crowder too, is he could be part of the Mavericks property and he could be on their roster, but they could also send him down to the D-League team in Frisco, again, the Texas Legends, and he'll have an opportunity to potentially play there and hone his skills and get his game better, where he's in a position to contribute more at the NBA level.
Sort of like how AAA baseball works with
Sure.
Major League teams?
Sure, absolutely. There's not, the difference, of course, with minor league baseball is someone's going to start at those lower levels and work their way up, where it's a developmental process. And in the NBA, you're drafted by that team, and there isn't there aren't a lot of levels to send a guy down to work his way back up. For the D League, it is though truly used as the initial D stands for, and that's development. And it's an opportunity, like I said, for guys who might not get a chance to play on the NBA team initially. And as a lot of people will say, look, there's no better way to become a better player than to play. And that gives you get that opportunity when you go to D-League teams.
Mark, the draft for the Mavs was a little strange because I believe every single player they picked, or both of them, I should say, neither one of them ended up with the Mavs. Certainly the big trade, Crowder was one of a couple of players selected by Cleveland and then packaged to Dallas in exchange for Tyler Zeller. Just how do you think that trade went for Dallas? Good trade, bad trade?
Well, we all have to wait and see how all the principals involved, how their careers develop over the years ahead. From my perspective, it did not go the way I thought it would for Dallas. I thought that they would probably stay at their 17th pick and draft someone because, look, like I said before, they've got a lot of, they're a team in transition and they've got open roster spots, and certainly they could use contributors. So then they could find, they need to find guys that are ready to step in and be able to play. The counter argument to that, though, is that they turned 1 pick into 3 picks, and maybe they'll have 3 guys who can step in and at least in situational roles and in small roles will be able to help the team win some games in this upcoming season. So it remains to be seen how it worked out. But one thing that they did do is save a little bit of money, and of course they're in a mode of opening up salary cap space to pursue free agents this upcoming off season with that all getting going in earnest here in early July. And they they certainly, like I said, they need depth. They don't have a lot of guys under contract, so one could argue if you traded one draft pick and a fringe player, and Kalena Azubuike was a guy that was also involved in that trade from the Mavericks. If you can trade one draft pick and a fringe player and turn that into three guys, if you can turn two into three, and the three guys can play, then obviously, and the three guys are going to play at a number salary-wise that's a little bit cheaper, then theoretically it's got a chance to work out pretty well. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, Mark, appreciate the time.